Welcome, everybody. Welcome to this edition of Ramblings of an Old Fart. My name's Craig Warren, and I'm 71 years old, and I've been married about almost 53 years. Father of 9 and grandpa to a bunch. I'm sort of retired. I retired at 65 to provide full-time care for my wife, who's had some serious health issues. But lately, I realized I needed something to do to keep my mind active. So why not a podcast? I have a lot of experience. I've done a lot of different things in my 50-plus years in the workforce. I have a lot of opinions, so what more would I need? I have to mention that I've never been a member of a political party, and I do not intend to do so. My podcasts do not come from a political place, just a factual and common sense place. I've titled this podcast today, Learning to Work. I decided on that title because of an article I seen recently, and it was talking about Gen Z, the Gen Z generation. The article said that Gen Z employees are being fired due to a combination of perceived issues, and they're being fired at a lot higher rate than what you would consider normal. A lot of it indicated was lack of initiative, communication challenges, unprofessional behavior, mismatch between their expectations and traditional workplace norms, a bunch of things like that. There were several articles from different. This article I read was actually kind of a summary of several other articles. But according to an article in Yahoo, many employers report that Gen Z workers often wait for explicit instructions. They avoid going beyond just the assigned tasks. They have no initiative. Like I said, they interpret it as low motivation or disengagement. Demonstrating initiative or understanding the goals of a task and following through is a critical thing. But yet, frequently, it's misunderstood or not understood, or it's just younger people just don't seem to get it. Maybe that's the bulk of it. Communication skills. The Gen Z grew up in a digital environment, right? Which leads to they don't have to spend as much face-to-face time. They're always tied up in video games, the virtual world. They're not equipped for the reality, apparently. Their email etiquette. We have all of these weird letter codes that nobody else understands but the young people, and that doesn't work in a professional environment. They don't handle feedback very well. Employers cite poor communication as a major factor in early dismissals, with misunderstandings and delayed responses affecting team performance. And that came from an article in a magazine called Cheapism. And then we have an article in Fortune magazine. Talks about professionalism and workplace etiquette. Issues such as tardiness, casual dress, informal language, and those are often flagged by their managers because it just doesn't work in the workplace, especially in certain workplaces. Gen Z values, they value authenticity and comfort. These behaviors can clash with the traditional office expectations, leading to perceptions of unprofessionalism. So you can be your authentic self on your own time. But when you're working for somebody else, you kind of have to behave the way they need you to for their customer base and for their work environment. That's my point of view. In an article in AOL, from AOL, the Gen Z prioritizes mental health, flexibility, and meaningful work. They are less willing to work overtime or tolerate low pay, which can be misinterpreted as entitlement or lack of commitment. Frequent job changes and a desire for rapid career growth also contribute to early terminations. Sometimes, you actually have to work for a while before somebody can find out if you're worth more money. You have to show them you're worth more money, not just ask for it. That's my personal opinion, of course. Then there's one from All Workspace. It said experts know that many workplaces have outdated onboarding practices. Okay. Unclear expectations and insufficient mentorship. I have never run into that. I've been in business my whole life and in management. I haven't run into that too much. And the insufficient mentorship, I don't think a business should have to be required to be your mentor for the most part, unless it's like an internship of some kind. They give you a job, they expect you to come ready to work. That's my point. I think we're trying to still treat them like babies instead of adults. That would be my opinion. Colleges often emphasize theory over practical skills, leaving graduates underprepared for the real-world work environments. Too much time playing video games probably increases that chance of that happening. But the mismatch between the employer expectations and Gen Z's needs exacerbates the turnover ratio. Another article from AOL says Gen Z challenges traditional hierarchies, questions rules, and expects transparency. While these traits can improve workplace culture, but they may create friction with managers accustomed to unquestioned authority, contributing to dismissals. If you're the new guy there, I'm not sure you should be questioning their means of operation. You should learn. If at some point when you have experience, you may make suggestions about some changes, but I don't think you should be questioning it right up front and then wonder why they're letting you go. Doesn't make sense to me. Okay, so this article did mention some things where they thought that the Gen Z generation could improve. It says demonstrate initiative by understanding the purpose of the task and following through without waiting for constant direction. Communication skills, including professional emails, meetings, and feedback handling. And then adapt to workplace norms while maintaining authenticity. I'm not sure what that really means, but such as punctuality and appropriate attire. Those are things. I understand that part, but I'm not sure the authenticity thing. But and then the balance of expectations. It says with patience, showing commitment and reliability before seeking rapid advancement. Of course. You have to show you can do the work before you expect to get a raise or a promotion. It only makes sense. Their conclusion was, in all of this, that high firing rates among Gen Z are not solely due to generational shortcomings. I believe that's quite a bit of it. But they reflect a combination of behavioral patterns, high expectations, and systemic gaps in onboarding and training. With improved soft skills, initiative, and alignment with workplace norms, Gen Z employees can thrive, while employers may need to adapt to better integrate this digitally native thing, whatever that means. But anyway, basically what they're saying is that everybody kind of needs to change to make this work. But I have a thought. This is exactly why when I seen this, I have a son that's in this age group. I have seen some of this very thing in his age group, and with him, he's had some issues, full employment and, regular employment, and so does a lot of the friends that he hangs out with. I have a thought. My dad always used to have a saying when I was growing up. Of course, I grew up on a farm. I've mentioned that before. I started working at an early age. From the time I was 4, I was out helping take care of the animals and do the chores. Other things. But my dad had a saying. He said if a boy hasn't learned to do a man's job by the time he's 12 to 14 years old, he probably never will. So that's why I entitled this podcast, Learning to Work. I think a lot of this, we talk about authenticity and all of this other mumbo jumbo, and some of that might be okay, but I just think in large part, these kids just don't know how to work. Learning to work is a skill. It's not just something that you're born with. As far as I know, I'm convinced that it's a learned skill, and the time to learn it is at a very young age. So I kind of consider this as a lost generation in a way. I think there's some responsibility on parents, not making sure that they're limited all this video games and all of the stuff. not making sure that they have assigned chores and enough things, and maybe give them the opportunity after they get 8, 10, 12 years old that they actually learn to work, have some responsibility. The schools, I don't think they help a lot. The problem I see is we need more opportunities for our young people to learn to work. When I was growing up, it wasn't uncommon for 14-year-old kids to have part-time jobs after school, and they worked 25, 30 hours a week during the summer. A lot of them worked, I know guys that they milk cows at a dairy for some of the farmers after school. I know some of the young girls worked at some of the drive-in restaurants or even some of the sit-down restaurants as a waitress from the time they were 14 years old. Didn't make a lot of hourly, but they made good tips. And that's what I'm talking about. In today's world, though, we have made laws that put such strict rules and regulations on young people working that a lot of employers now have just given up on that. I know a lot of them that won't even hire anybody until they're 18. A few of them still at 16. But if my dad's theory is correct, that's a little bit on the late side. And I know we also hear a lot of people say that we bring in a lot of immigrants in to take jobs that Americans just don't want to do anymore. Well, I propose that a lot of times we have jobs that Americans would do, but the legal system says they can't. And I think we need to change that a little bit. I understand a lot of these laws were passed because we didn't want child labor issues and slave labor, that kind of stuff. I'm not talking about that. But just because you're 12, 13, 14 years old doesn't mean you shouldn't learn how to work hard when it's required. That's my point. As I mentioned earlier, I grew up on a farm. I started working as early as 4 years old. I was doing the chores, and for a while we lived in town in Ogden, Utah, and we had the farm was about 8 or 10 miles out of town there. But I was up with my dad at 5 o'clock, 5:30 in the morning. We'd get breakfast. We were out on the farm working. We'd be out there all day. We'd take a lunch and a water jug, and I'd be out there working alongside him all day long. At 4 years old, I'd get a little tired, so if Dad was doing something, just working there in the yard, I'd go jump in the truck there on the bench seat and have a nap for a while. If we were working on the tractor, I would just sit down. The tractor had fenders on the side and had the hydraulic arms in the back, and Dad's leg in the front, so I'd just sit down there and just go to sleep. Surprising how well you can sleep on a tractor. You get that constant, consistent noise of the engine. Amazing how well you can sleep like that. But as I grew older, Dad sold that farm and we bought another one in a different spot. But from the time I was 10, me and my older brother Kelly was a year older than I was. We pretty much took care of the farm. It was about 150 acres. Some of the stuff we couldn't do, Dad would do at night. He worked construction all summer because the farm wasn't big enough to make a living. And so he would get a lot of the work done at night. If the hay was ready to cut, he wouldn't allow us to use those old drop bar mowers because they were so dangerous. They were, and he wouldn't allow us to bale hay with the baler because the old equipment like that was not as like it is the new stuff. They didn't have near as many guards on there to protect you from the PTO and the cutting blade of that mower, those kind of things. But once he got it cut and we got it baled, then it was our job to haul all that hay. With the tractor, we'd hook it up to a flatbed trailer and go down the field, load it, and then go up and back it in the barn and stack it in the barn. And we had a reasonable amount of hay. We would get 1,500 bales of crop a lot of years. So you figure out by three crops and sometimes even a fourth. That's a pretty good job for, a couple of kids. Now my younger brother, he was only about 7 at that time, but we'd get down in the field. We would get him on the tractor, and one of us would get it started because, of course, he couldn't reach the clutch, and wouldn't be able to push it in even if he could have reached it. But we'd just get him started, and then we'd jump off, and he'd guide it down through the field and around the bales. If he'd get in trouble, why, he would just, reach down there right under the steering wheel. It was a kill button. So we'd just shut it down, and then one of us would jump on it and get him straightened back out again. But that's what we did. We took care of all the irrigating, all that kind of stuff. So we learned to work when I was growing up. It was just part of life. It was just normal for us. One day, though, I want to tell you of an experience. I was probably about 14 or 15. My dad was just trying to start a land leveling business. He bought an old paddle wheel scraper. And so that's what he was going to use and pull behind the tractor. But it was kind of wore out. So we had to do some rebuilding. And this was like in early to mid-March. And so in northern Utah here, at that time of year, you get a lot of these storms coming through. And once they pass through, on the back side of that storm, you get a lot of east wind down out of the mountains. We lived up on the foothills. And normally on those days, you would get snow flurries, and then it'd come out sunshine, but it was still blowing like crazy, and it was cold. And so Dad was up on the top of that thing, welding, fixing some of the sprockets up on the top that drove the big chain, the paddles that fed the dirt back up into the box there. And so I would be on the ground there so I could hand him tools, I could hand him welding rod, I could adjust the settings on the welder if he needed it. But sometimes he'd be welding up there for 30 or 40 minutes and didn't need anything. So it was really, really cold. And so I thought, geez, if I just walk around on the other side of that scraper, on the west side, I can block that wind. And also the sun's kind of shining over there. So if you're out of the wind and you get this sunshine, it felt a lot warmer, right? Problem was, one time he hollered because he needed some more welding rod or something. Of course, with the wind blowing and the welder running, I didn't hear him. So he jumped off the top, then come around and said, hey, dude, I need some stuff, So I said, okay. So I helped him get it. And then it's kind of the same thing, it was another 30, 40 minutes. And so I went back, standing out of the wind. I thought, God, I'll listen careful. But I didn't hear him again. So this time when he got off of the machine, came around, he looked at me, he said, Craig, I need your help, but I need everything you got. If you can't give it to me, then just go in the house and help your mom bake cookies or something, because I can't use you. So some of these Gen Zers might take that and realize that if they're being let go, it might be their employer's way of telling them to go help their mom bake cookies or something, right? Because that's kind of what it means. You got to step up. You got to be there. And if you take a job, you got to give them everything you got. You know what I mean? They're paying you. You took the job. You owe it to them. That's my point. And I think we got all these other little things, and everybody's got their idea about how we can do everything different. But I truly believe it comes down to just knowing how to work. Show the initiative so that you're not afraid to get the work done. Do whatever it takes. Well, that's my point. I'm kind of rambling here, but let me just move on to one other thing. I heard here, about a year ago, watching our local Fox news station, and they have a thing on there where it's once a week. They have what they call the cool school of the week, and they go to the different schools and they interview them, see what kind of special programs they have. A lot of times it's their cheerleading crew, and they've been all over the nationals or, different things like that. But this one week, it was one of these academy schools, and I was quite impressed because they had they were fifth grade kids, and they had 4 groups of four kids. They were on teams, and they were tasked with creating a product of some kind. They had to create the product, create a demonstration for it, or if it wasn't a demonstratable product, they had to create some kind of a sales presentation. or some, graphics or something. But anyway, there was a group of 4 boys that they were the ones that got the best offer. I missed the part about where when they had everything ready, they invited some of the business people in from their area, and they had their own little Shark Tank thing. But these 4 boys, I listened to their presentation to the Shark Tank, and I seen their demonstration, but they spoke extremely well. I don't know if you've noticed that a lot of our young kids these days, it's always and like, and that kind of stuff drives me crazy. But it wasn't like that. Extremely, extremely good presentation. So I found that very interesting. But the other thing that I found tremendously interesting was they interviewed the school principal. And she said something that I thought was extremely, extremely appropriate. She said, "In today's world, I think we dramatically underestimate what these young people can do." And I think that's right. I think we need to make sure that our kids know we have certain expectations, but we should also give them opportunities like this so that they can not only show us what they can do, but more importantly, they can show themselves what they can do and what they can achieve. So that's my ramblings for today. But when I seen this article, it fit because I have some personal experience with that age group. And so I just wanted to kind of let you know what I thought about it. Thank you for joining me today. I hope you found it entertaining or educational or thought-provoking. Join me next time, won't you? I'm Craig Warren, and this has been the Ramblings of an Old Fart podcast. God bless and keep you. Till next time.